All right. I think with the interest of time, we've got three amazing panelists and presenters today, longtime strategic partners of NCATC, MSSC, the Manufacturing Skill Standards Council, and Amatrol. Without further ado, if we can just give you a quick 2-minute version of what we're all about at NCATC for those of you that might not know. Trey, if you'll flip the next slide, that'll help. We have 4 pillars that we stand for in the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers. We are an affiliated council in the workforce development area of the American Association of Community Colleges. And our 4 pillars are future work, smart manufacturing and automation, big part of what we're talking about today with MSSC and Amatrol, Industry 4.0. The second pillar is all about work-based learning, everything from full-blown apprenticeships to internships, co-ops, and even entrepreneurship and pre-apprenticeships. And the third pillar, we really are strong on competency-based education, where applied skills and knowledge meet with industry's needs. And if they can be industry-recognized credentials, like MSSC today, and certifications, all the better for the student and the organization hiring. Last but certainly not least, our fourth pillar is all about adult learning opportunities, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness in underserved and underrepresented populations. We strive to help all colleges and industry do a better job of that. Next slide, please. We are represented these days with over 165 technical and community colleges across the nation in 38 of the 50 states. You'll see the map here. But we also have 48 corporate strategic partners like MSSC and Amatrol, and I'll show you that in a minute. Next slide. We actually have a lot of work we do also with 8 of the Manufacturing USA Institutes. A lot of times they're called the Innovation Institutes, MIIs. And the ones that are funded by the Department of Defense, we worked with for over 10 years. America Makes was the first, the ARM Institute for Robotics in PA, NextFlex on the West Coast, IACME for composites, et cetera. But last but certainly not least, that's fine, Trey. That's all on our website if you need to see that. We have the 48 corporate strategic partners, and those logos are represented right here on the screen. And again, you can find those on the ncatc.org website under partners if you'd like to look more at those and click on those to go to their websites directly. So without further ado, I'd like to just basically give a quick introduction to our panelists and give you the overall goal of today's webinar is to help you understand the best practices coming from the field in not only the certification and credentials area with MSSC, but Amatrol with a hands-on experiential learning in our labs and coupled with industry's input along the whole way. That would be for the pipeline of certified supply chain technicians, automation technicians. And that automation technician can be applied pretty much anywhere, especially in a warehouse simulated like in my background today. First, I want to introduce and let you know about Steve Harrington. He's a senior advisor to MSSC for the Certified Technician Supply Chain Automation Certification System. Along with that, he develops and manages an industry leadership team consisting of 24 plus executive level supply chain professionals and stakeholders for the purpose of the National Center for Supply Chain Automation, developed based on industry divine needs. Second, I'd like to introduce and give you a little background on Kent Powell. Kent came to Amatrol 22 years ago with the industrial automation business. And Kent spent 17 years before that with Rockwell Automation and 5 years in the Industry 4.0 integration business before landing at Amatrol. He is now the North American sales manager for Amatrol, and I've worked with him in PA and a few other states, and he is an amazing resource of knowledge from education to industry as well. Last but certainly not least, the center point of our presentation today is the CEO of MSSC. He is a co-founder of the Manufacturing Skill Standards Council, an industry-led nonprofit training and assessment and certification organization focused on the core technical competencies needed by our nation's frontline production and material handling workers. MSSC, believe this or not, has more than 1,900 authorized assessment and training centers in 49 of the 50 states. Unbelievable growth in the last decade, and has issued almost 200,000 credentials in their time to date. I'm sure that'll probably go over the 200,000 mark as we're on the webinar today. Neil has also worked for the National Council of Advanced Manufacturing, as well as working with the Department of Defense and NIST on helping them get national programs dedicated toward the advancement and development of the next generation of workforce. He's dedicated his entire life pretty much to what we do here. So without further ado, I'd like to start with our first keynote and turn it over to Steve. Steve, it's all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Yep. Okay. Good morning or good afternoon for those of you that are in other parts of the country. I'm on the West Coast myself. This is a very exciting time to be involved in the supply chain, which has become front and center in the national dialogue since the beginning of COVID. You know, I had a 30-year career in transportation, warehousing, and logistics. And when I would talk to people about that, they never understood what supply chain was. And I spent 12 years as president of the Distribution Management Association of Southern California. And one of our primary functions was to advocate on behalf of the industry with educators and community leaders, you know, to get funding and programs stood up behind that. But now everybody, you go down to your local coffee shop and, you know, there's just talk of the supply chain in the local coffee shop, and the owner in the coffee shop, you know, he understands it because he can't get lids for his coffee cups, and he's paying through the roof for coffee because it's at the port, it's stuck at the port, and there are other related supply chain issues. So these are some interesting times. Everyone right now should be aware of the labor shortage that's going on across the country, and was kicked off by exacerbated by COVID, and which is driving the need for supply chain automation. Here's a chart with the 2019 population demographics for the 12 largest industrialized countries in the world. If you look at the highlighted area, the United States shows that in 2019, there were 16.2% of the US population was over the age of 65. That's growing between now and 2030 to over 20% of the population. And what that represents is a delta of approximately 18 million people that are moving toward retirement age. It looks like maybe about 3 million of those have already retired during the period of COVID. But this is this workforce drop-off's very severe, and we're beginning to see it now. By 2030, all US baby boomers will be older than the age of 65. Now the US is becoming, for those countries at the top of the chart, the use of automation has been a reality for over 20 years. Japan, Italy, Germany, you look at the percentage of their populations which are over the age of 65. The US now is becoming more like Europe and Japan. These population demographics are driving the need for supply chain automation and also driving a need for highly skilled technicians to keep these automated systems operational. So this is a slide that shows the global impact of e-commerce. And again, that's dated back to 2019. And you know, these are really big numbers, 103 billion packages. Try to get your mind around that, the speed that that was occurring. But basically at that point in time, over the next 7 years, it was forecasted to grow to double between there in 2026. But as a result of COVID, things have changed rapidly, presenting significant challenges to retailers. You have to remember that the consumer is now in control of everything. All the information the consumer needs is at their fingertips. E-commerce represents an endless aisle of choices where convenience is king and free delivery is expected. Compounding the challenge is a lack of space, a shortage of skilled workers, and a relentless need for speed. What's making this happen? How is this occurring behind the scenes? Advanced automated material handling equipment and systems are behind the scenes, allowing this demand to grow. System downtime is very expensive and just not an option. And the skilled technicians to keep these systems operational are essential. So that was a global view. And this is a US view. And this slide dates back to 2020, and it was a forecast of the growth of e-commerce as it was forecasted by the US Department of Commerce. And if you look at the years at the far right, between 2019 and 2020, that growth, about $85 billion in growth in e-commerce. The impact of that to the retailer is quite significant as it continues to grow, because that volume, which used to be shipped a carton at a time or a pallet at a time, is now being shipped one item at a time or one each at a time, which requires a significant amount of handling in the distribution center. Typical distribution centers used to employ in the hundreds. Advanced e-commerce distribution centers employ people in the thousands. And so it requires a lot more handling, a lot more complexity, and of course, a much higher level of automated equipment and systems to keep that volume moving. So if you move forward, so what happened at the beginning of COVID? How did the supply chain change? What were the impacts? And if you look at this growth that was occurring, which was on the prior slide, which is what was forecast, you had this massive spike upward. And there you had 45% growth in e-commerce over the period of a 3-month period of time in the second quarter of 2020. And that wreaked havoc on the supply chain in retailers across the country, kind of having to pivot and adjust to that volume. One of those impacts was in the small package industry. You think about FedEx Ground, UPS, USPS, and of course now Amazon Logistics, which I'll be touching upon in a minute. But what happened into the fall of 2020 was basically there was a daily demand to ship 86 million packages across the US, and the US capacity was about 79 million packages. There's about a 10% gap there. And the package shipping companies were scrambling to meet the demand, making plans to build new facilities, add automated systems, and add staffing behind that. And of course, hire additional technicians to keep those automated systems operational. So now we're post COVID as we begin to move forward. And if you look in the middle of this slide at the year of 2019 and 2020, what it shows you the jump that occurred in terms of the permanent percent change. You had the initial spike that occurred, and everybody in the world was having to order via e-commerce. But now you're talking about things settled down in the permanent. What this slide conveys, if you look at the difference between 2019 and 2022, was basically in 2019, 1 out of every 8 items that were bought using e-commerce. Now in 2022, the forecast is for 1 out of 5 items. So again, that is quite a pivot for retailers to begin to adjust that in terms of their supply chain configuration and the automated systems they need to be able to address that sort of change in their networks. So back in 2016, CB Richard Ellis came up with a metric because the retailers were shutting their bricks and mortar stores, things were pivoting toward e-commerce, and traditional metrics in the measurement of kind of forecasting of the amount of warehouse space that was needed in the country were changing. And so CB Richard Ellis came up with this metric saying for $1 billion in additional e-commerce sales, there was an additional need for 1.25 million square feet of distribution space. And that is over and above what would be expected for that sort of retail growth. So if you think back to the original forecast from 2019, 2020, and the industry was forecast to grow $85 billion. That represents about 110 million square feet of additional space that was needed in the supply chain. But of course, that's changed, and the demand is crazy. And so the trend is accelerating the need for warehousing, accelerating the need for automation, automated systems, and accelerating the need for skilled technicians. So this is the most recent boots on the ground data point. I picked up at the top number 141 million square feet. So that would have been the fourth quarter of 2021 from the Wall Street Journal. And the source was Jones Lang LaSalle. But it said that during the fourth quarter alone, just during that period of time, The net absorption, which is everything that was empty and everything that was newly built, was leased. Leases were signed for this space. That's the largest number in the history of record keeping for commercial real estate. And in general, over the past year, that number's grown 540 million square feet of net absorption. And for the first time in history, it's been over 500 million. And just as importantly, 636 million square feet of warehouse space are under construction in the US at this juncture, trying to address the pivot that has occurred as a result of the surge of e-commerce. It's moving closer to population centers, and there's an inventory strategy pivot. Companies were always focused on just-in-time inventory. Now they're storing just-in-case inventory, which is swelling the amount of warehouse space that's needed. This is a very busy slide, I know, but it's an important one in terms of seeing where the hot areas are in the different parts of the country. I know that many of you are from different parts of the country. This chart, this spreadsheet is sorted by the fastest growing in terms of new development in different parts of the country. You look at the far right column, how that steps down. You look at the Dallas-Fort Worth market, which is unparalleled to any other market in the entire country. And then, of course, I've spoken about net absorption already, and that is what has occurred in the past year. And then in general, the column on the far left, the square feet, it shows you how big a given region is in terms of the amount of warehouse space that's in development. One interesting item to note, you look at the 10th one down, which says Savannah. The size of Savannah relative to the other big logistics hubs in the country wasn't very big. But if you pivot all the way over to the right, there's a significant amount of new development and new building that's going on in the Savannah area. So that's all the result of e-commerce and what's going on with the ports. So one other set of industry data that I'll leave you with before I pivot my presentation was Amazon and Amazon's impact on the market that has occurred. In 2021, during COVID, Amazon added 138 million square feet of warehouse space across the US. To put that in context, over a 46-year period of time, Walmart's distribution network was built out for a total of 144 million square feet. So Amazon basically added the size of Walmart in 1 year in terms of their distribution network. There's also this Amazon logistics, Amazon handling their own small packages. You see those vans coming through your neighborhoods now all of the time. In 2020, Amazon shipped 4.2 billion small packages, and it's forecast that they shipped in excess of 6 billion in 2021. Amazon Logistics was formed in 2012. UPS is a 114-year-old company. Amazon Logistics is now shipping more packages through their own internal network than UPS is. Quite astounding. And Amazon is going to begin to compete with UPS and FedEx Ground and take over their own, all the packages they hand over to the United States Postal Office. And if you look in terms of employment, another quite stunning statistic is that 1 out of every 153 working person in this country that's non-farming is working for Amazon now. And 950,000 people work in the Amazon distribution network. And another stunning number is that during 2020, in the height of COVID, Amazon added 500,000 workers, basically at a clip of close to 10,000 people a day. So this is the great disruptor, and this is also a factor that's reshaping the entire industry. On top of that, Amazon has about 350,000 Kiva shuttle robots. You think of Roombas, the little vacuum, it's much bigger than that, and it carries around pallets of merchandise in carts throughout their network. But Amazon, you have 350,000 Kiva robots. All the rest of the industry together have about 75,000 robots deployed globally. So quite an interesting data set, and giving you a feel for how things are pivoting in the logistics industry. This slide shows some of the automated equipment and systems that are being deployed in today's modern logistics world. It's you go by these big white buildings on the side of the road, you have no idea what's going on inside of them and the sort of systems that are in them. And the investment in some of these buildings are anywhere from $5 to $100 million. There's next generation buildings that are being stood up today, and that employ upwards of 60, 70, 80 technicians to keep these facilities operational. Part of my background prior to this, it was with the National Center for Supply Chain Automation, or SCA. And SCA was funded by the National Science Foundation, focused on technician education and resource development, and was industry guided and driven from a strategic perspective in terms of resource development. The focus of the center was to increase the supply of highly qualified supply chain automation technicians. And one of the 4 key objectives of the center was to establish and promote a stackable national industry certifications in supply chain automation, which are validated and recognized by industry. Here is a list of the varying academic partners that were involved in the project from varying parts of the country. And my role as industry liaison was to assemble a group of industry advisors to help the center both in strategic vision and resource development, and then later on in the development of the certification you'll be learning about today. And one key thing that the industry helped us do was provide a definition for this occupation: a person who installs, maintains, supports, operates, or upgrades the automated material handling equipment and systems which support the supply chain. It's at the intersection of traditional industrial mechanics with information technology. It's a combination of traditional mechanical, electrical, and computerized motor controls. It's a multi-craft or multi-skilled technician. And it was really a varied skill set with a lot of different things that that person needs to know and be taught. The National Science Foundation funds career pathways for careers, emerging careers, which pay living wages from the start and have a career pathway where salary progression occurs and somebody can have an occupation that supports themselves and their families. This is an example of a career pathway from one of the industry partners of the National Center, which shows that career pathway. And at the entry level, right now, entry-level technicians are making in the $22 to $25 an hour range, and within a couple-year period of time are well into the 30s, $30, $35, $40 an hour range. So very good wages occurring that exist for the technicians in today's automated logistics operation. So one of the things that was identified, of course, a key objective for the center was the contributing to the development of an industry-validated certification. And the initial part of the center's research identified that nothing like that existed. And so what happened was the center formed a partnership with MSSC and MHI for the purpose of developing a certification. And my role as industry liaison, I convened a series of industry leadership team focus groups that consisted of consumer good retailers, package shippers and handlers, and automated equipment suppliers. So we pulled together a group of those groups of people, engaged them, learned about what these technicians did, documented it, created a report, and sent that report on to the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council, which took that data and developed draft skills standards. Those draft skills standards were then passed back to industry to be revalidated. And then along the line, assessments were developed and the certification was developed. Industry leadership team members from the National Center were involved in the entire process, as well as a review of the e-learning materials which support the system. So well, that was a lot of data, a lot and all of that. If you are interested in more detailed reports or specific data as it relates to what I shared, I have those on my laptop. I'd be happy to share them. With that said, I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to my friend and colleague, Mr. Neil Reddy, CEO of the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council. Neil?
Thank you so much, Steve, for that excellent presentation. And I really appreciate, of course, the history of us working together and all your work with the National Center for Supply Chain Automation and Kent Powell, all of our work for 15 years plus with Amatrol, and of course, almost that many years of time working with the NCATC community, working with Craig McAtee and his team. So thank you everyone for being on the call today. And it's a real pleasure and a very exciting time and great opportunity for me to be able to introduce our latest certification. We launched this about a year ago, and as Steve mentioned, unfortunately, it was right during COVID, and it contains both a hands-on element as well as an e-learning element in terms of instruction. As you know, with all the school closings, we didn't have a lot of close proximity training, but it still did not diminish the value. And we have a great opportunity here to sort of introduce again our certified technician supply chain automation training and certification program. Just a little background. I think most of you know the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council. We originated going back to 1998 under the National Skills Standards Act, originally developing production standards and certification programs to prepare people to be production technicians, and involved large industry sectors and large samplings of workers. It served as subject matter expert to develop these standards. And we go through the same process for all what are now 7 certification programs, where we have the individual workers and engineers that are involved in the day-to-day work to identify, define, and validate those standards. And that standard development work, where we also work with IO-PhDs, really is the bedrock of each of our certifications. And so we go through a very lengthy process and reaching the highest levels of ISO accreditation under ISO standard 17024 and the highest standards of industry. And we've gone on since 1998 now to develop, as Craig mentioned, a network of close to 2,000 training and assessment centers, a network of over 3,000 instructors that deliver our training products, our courses, and then have individuals go through, and once they've gone through the training in different areas, they can sit for assessments and earn our credentials. And as Craig mentioned, we've issued close to over 200,000 at this point. But what's so exciting is we're able to take a large population of people that might not have really been able to consider career pathways in logistics, supply chain logistics, in manufacturing. And I think during COVID, we do see a large group of populations that are shifting into areas with more promising long-term career pathways. And certainly these 3 certifications that have been developed through this fantastic collaboration with the National Center for Supply Chain Automation, that Steve Harrington works with and has worked with for so many years, Amatrol, Material Handling Industries, and the Material Handling Equipment Distributors Association, MAHITA. But again, as Steve outlined here, the overall this occupation and the certificates that we'll be putting through are this is going to be a person who installs, operates, supports, upgrades, or maintains the automated material handling equipment and systems that support the supply chain. These are the people that enable an Amazon to get a product to your door, and these technologies are the technologies that enable a product to get to your door in an afternoon, in a period of just hours, which is just staggering from a logistics and technological standpoint. And hopefully some of you will visit one of these advanced distribution centers, which are really just a technological marvel. But like all of our certifications, we have developed a fully comprehensive system of industry-defined, validated national standards, assessments, courseware, instructor training, credentials, and then, of course, we have to maintain a registry of all of our certificates as part of our ISO 17024 requirement. So the first certification is called the SCA Equipment Maintenance, which involves maintaining equipment systems. The second certification is Equipment Repair, installing, modifying, troubleshooting, and repairing equipment systems. And the third is Network Repair, installing, modifying, troubleshooting, and repairing basic controllers and networks. And that is, we're seeing an area with big data analytics, where we're seeing these large, incredible, and integrated intelligent systems that are running these operations that are just phenomenal. But here's just a list of some of the equipment maintenance key activities. I don't need to read them all out to you, but equipment maintenance is one area where we do feel that maybe a senior, it's one area, the academic level is quite high. So we're looking at least high school degree equipment maintenance. We feel a senior or more advanced junior, and the mathematics level is a little higher for the SCA program than with our CPT or CLT or other programs. Of course, equipment maintenance, then that's kind of the first certification, of course, and then the second is equipment repair, where you're troubleshooting machines, mechanical, electrical, hydraulic, pneumatic systems, repairing mechanical, electrical, pneumatic system, doing the repair, troubleshooting, preparing for the repair process, installing and moving or removing equipment. The third would be network repair. These key activities include installing and maintaining PLCs, PLC modules, troubleshooting and repair PLCs with discrete I/O PLC modules, installing, maintaining, and troubleshooting PLC systems with variable frequency AC drives, operate and test equipment, network systems, scanners, and run systems. So there's a lot involved. We have the key activities we can share that are behind each one of these certifications in more detail. So how does an individual earn each one of these certifications? So there's two parts. One is an e-learning component, and the other is a hands-on component using a SkillBoss logistics device or machine. The e-learning, again, based on the standards and fantastic input from top employers that Steve had listed. The e-learning interacts and complements the SkillBoss logistics hands-on device, and Kent Powell will be talking about this in a lot more detail. So there's individuals go through the e-learning and sit for a multiple choice assessment based on the e-learning. And then based on the hands-on training on the SkillBoss logistics device or machine, they go through a performance-based assessment with an instructor that observes them being able to perform these hands-on skills. So there are two components, a multiple choice and then a hands-on performance-based assessment. An individual must earn both of these and meet the cut score for both of these in order to earn one of these three certifications. We've had Target start, and we've had some different programs starting up around the country. We estimate the time about 200 hours plus for each of these three certifications in terms of the training time, hands-on training time, and so forth. So it's very exciting. And I think Steve had already mentioned some of the potential employment and earnings levels. And again, like all of our other certifications, we want people to grow. We want them to start out with equipment maintenance, build on those skills, move on to equipment repair, and then move on to network repair. Because if they earn all three, then their income levels rise considerably. So again, we go through a lot of work to maintain very high levels under ISO standards. We're endorsed by the National Association of Manufacturers, and we're very well recognized by all the federal agencies. I think if you're looking at a lot of the funding for what are called equity populations or opportunity populations, these certifications can provide those entry points into what can go on to be very lucrative career paths, whether they're certification, automation technician, but also there's no hindrance for them to go on to earn degrees and get into management and so forth. So we're at a very strong beginning point. These are life-sustaining wages. These are family-sustaining wages, and so forth. So it makes the technician training accessible to this much larger population, to rural populations, to urban populations who might not otherwise have been able to get into these career paths. So this is already being used successfully with MSSC Certified Technician Plus hands-on program. This is the production technician device. This here, I want to show you, this is the SkillBoss logistics machine that Kent Powell will be telling you a lot more about. That's very exciting and interacts with a PLC and so forth. So with that said, let me turn this over to Kent Powell, and he can tell you a lot more about the actual learning experience and these skill areas that people can develop and be able to document these skills. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Neil. As Neil mentioned, SkillBoss Logistics is the device for assessing the hands-on skills for CT-SCA certification. Everyone who gets certified must test out on this device to ensure the evaluation is consistent. That's a big deal. SkillBoss also has a second purpose, and we see schools using it as a training device to enable individuals to learn the skills that they're going to be assessed on. The development of SkillBoss was an extensive process. It spanned over 2 years, and I can truly say it's been a team effort. Leadership came from 5 key organizations: the National Center for Supply Chain Automation, based out of California; MSSC, who's based in Virginia; Material Handling Equipment Distributors Association, MAHETA, from Illinois; the Material Handling Institute, MHI, they're based out of North Carolina; and of course, Amatrol, we're based in Indiana. The group not only created the vision for the device, but also played a key role engaging industry experts in the development. You might say we created the who's who of the supply chain industry with iconic names like these folks that helped actually design the SkillBoss logistics. They came up with the vision and helped with the design. They spent countless hours reviewing and testing the prototypes to evaluate the skills. And the device that resulted is this guy right here. If you look at the left side of the screen, what you see is basically a tabletop sortation system. Even though it's compact, the SkillBoss Logistic uses the same technologies, the same techniques actually used in large-scale sortation system, like the system you see on the right, which is a typical distribution center. On SkillBoss, packages are inducted, scanned, routed into multiple conveyors, and then sorted into 3 destination bins. There is a different change here, though. If there's a bad scan, we actually send that package to a rework station. All the skills are not only applicable to sortation systems. In fact, we took extra effort to make sure that we included a wide range of technologies so that skills learned and assessed apply to other types of supply chain automation. The SkillBoss skills are aligned with the 3 CT-SCA certification tests. To learn the skills, we've developed 3 online courses which are aligned with the 3 certifications. Those courses can be actually purchased from MSSC as part of that package. So the courses not only prepare individuals for the CT-SCA hands-on assessment, but they also prepare them for the certification tests. Each course is about 150 to 200 hours, which includes the time to learn the multimedia content, as well as the hands-on skills using SkillBoss Logistics. This slide shows some examples of the screens of the online courses. As you can see, they're truly multimedia courses with animations, 3D graphics, voice, and text. They're highly interactive. The courses have also been designed specifically to focus on the technology of supply chain automation. This means students can go through the courses faster than if they were taking, let's say, a traditional maintenance course being taught at a college today. Now, those courses could apply easily to the supply chain industry, but this particular course is focused specifically on that. This feature then makes the courses ideal for workforce development, in-plant training, and as we know, those are 2 places where time is extremely critical. The course also features simulators so students can practice the hands-on skills online, in addition to using the SkillBoss logistics in the lab. This slide shows some examples of our simulators, and basically we cover fundamentals such as electricity, motor control, pneumatics, and PLCs. We call these simulators virtual trainers because they allow individuals to perform the same skills that they would perform on the actual industry training equipment. What makes the virtual trainers special is that they have the same behaviors as the real devices. What this means is if a student makes a mistake, they see the results of that mistake on the screen before they go to the equipment. Once students have learned the concepts through the online courses and the virtual trainers, they're ready to practice their skills on SkillBoss Logistics, and the hands-on learning goes a lot quicker as a result of that. So let's take a look at SkillBoss Logistics and what comes with it. There's actually 3 groups of items that we use here. There's about 150 skills that align with the certifications that can be performed on this device. To perform the skills, the learner then would go into the 3 major elements, which start with a human-machine interface, HMI, which runs the warehouse control software. It runs on a basically a touchscreen PC. A control unit with a PLC Ethernet network and a variable frequency drive that's contained in the control system there. And then, of course, the workstation itself, which involves multiple types of conveyors, multiple sensors, actuators, and a barcode scanner. These elements all work together to create a real sortation system that's similar to what you'd find in a distribution center. In addition to these elements, which enable the skill boss to operate, there's one really special element that causes the skill boss to not operate. And that is actually one of the most important parts of the skill boss logistics. To accomplish this, we actually employ a software program that Amatrol has invented called Fault Pro. Fault Pro consists of an electronic circuit board and software that inserts faults into the system and tracks the student's troubleshooting activity. Over 50 real-world faults can be inserted into the system using a computerized method of faulting the items or the different parts of Skill Boss. It really has a number of benefits. First of all, it's safe. The students are safe. They're not going to get hurt. It's not going to hurt the equipment. It's automated, so students can learn troubleshooting at their own pace. So they don't have to have the teacher hovering over them at every turn through their troubleshooting exercises. And lastly, it creates a data record so students and teachers can use that to improve the abilities of everyone. So with that, I've described the Skill Boss logistics. Let's take a look at what it actually looks like and how it actually works. The Skill Boss workstation is designed to be accessed, I should say, from all four sides so multiple students can work at the same time. We've also designed it for safety with features like guards and safety switches placed over critical moving components. To start the process, packages are simply placed on the induction roller conveyor. These packages are then fed with gap spacing through the induction belt conveyor to be scanned by a barcode reader. And here you'll see that the packages are being inducted onto the, I don't know why this is running in slow motion, but it sure is. Okay, well, we will continue. So I'll go back and show you the rest of that video in just a second. I'll try to fix the speed on that. One of the other most important things of the Skill Boss logistics itself is actually the fact that we do master instructor training. Now, this master training currently has been conducted at Amatrol, scheduled through MSSC and Amatrol, and we have training sessions throughout the year. You can simply go to our website and actually register for that training. When you buy a Skill Boss logistics, or actually if you register for the training, we check to make sure you actually have a Skill Boss logistics because you're going to need to use that to get certified with the certificates before you can move on and actually teach the course. So with that being said, we do these courses. Now, interestingly enough, there's actually 49 plus locations, education locations, schools, high schools and colleges throughout the country that have one or multiple Skill Boss logistics. They're set up, ready to train their own people, ready to train their students, but could also be used as an authorized training center, provided they check all the boxes with MSSC to train not only technicians, but also instructors to get them certified so that they can in turn, certify other instructors. So with that, I know there's going to be a lot of questions. I will make available to you the video. I'm sorry, I don't know why it was running in slow motion, but I know we're short on time. So I'm going to move along to the last slide. And these are the folks that you met today. I'm going to turn this back over to Craig. And if we can answer any questions for you that we don't get to here in the question and answer section, please feel free to reach out to any of us via email. Craig, back to you.
Well, thanks, Kent, and thanks, Neil and Steve as well. We've got about 15 minutes before the end of the webinar for Q&A, and we've got 3 or 4 or 5 actually from the audience today. I'd like to start with one that says, back to Kent, what are the requirements for instructors to get certified in these certifications, EM, ER, NR, et cetera, that Neil covered? Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, I can help a little bit. That's probably a Neil question, but you would need to go to training and actually be certified. So I've actually witnessed several training courses that we have provided here at Amatrol. Since we actually manufacture the device here, we've got 5 or 6 of them set up in a training room, and each of the instructors will come in. They'll spend a little bit of time kind of refreshing their memory on the equipment itself, and then they will do the hands-on assessment part. They will have already taken the online assessment through MSSC testing portal, and then they can arrive at a testing site and actually do the hands-on assessment. There's a variety of different test scenarios that they would go through. So every person is not going to do exactly the same test scenario perhaps, but they will have to have a very strong knowledge in PLCs, automation, sensors, barcode scanners, conveyor systems, and the warehouse management system as well.
Great. Well, that helps a lot. Hopefully that answered that question. Another question came in from Paul Smith. I'm going to read from the chat here. Countries such as Japan, Germany, France have imported or allowed in as much as 30% of the needed workforce in order to make up the lack of population native to the workforce there. Automation is skilled or knowledge workers. How will we develop the programs to train immigrants who may have no education at all? Anybody want to take that one on?
I'll be willing to make a shot here. I work with a lot of different community colleges and universities, and even trade centers and training centers and all. There is a boatload of training going on in non-English speaking areas to teach people those basic skills. If you look at the Skill Boss Logistics and the CT-SCA certifications, they all start out with the very basic fundamental foundational skills that are needed. Print reading, AC/DC electrical, pneumatics, motors and motor control, HMI. Those are all very basic. Then when we get into variable frequency drives, we get into communication systems and software and PLC programming, it bumps it up a notch. But I will tell you that in my travels across the United States and Canada, I've seen many, many schools that are teaching this technology in multiple languages that would easily prepare a student to sit for the certification.
Great answer. And so many of our members across the nation are really doing a much better job of the equity and diversity and inclusion in their student population, attraction to programs like these, Kent and Steve and Neil. So all that we can do together will make that even better. So thanks for that answer. How about a question for Steve? Are companies showing interest in the Certified Technician Supply Chain Automation Program? And can you name a few? Maybe you did in your presentation, but just to refresh our memory.
So quite a novel thing that's occurring. So Target's been involved with the National Center since its inception, providing strategic guidance, helped develop the NEAT textbook, and been part of the industry leadership team, and of course, involved in the development of the certification, both involved in the focus groups, involved in the design of the device, and all of that sort of thing. And so at a juncture about 2 years ago, Target had reached out to me and looking to at a shortage of technicians in Southern California, and they were looking to solve that challenge. And we ended up putting together a program and working with them around an apprenticeship in the CT-SCA certification involving the Skill Boss Logistics device and a training center. And that's been progressing along nicely. And as I understand it, Target has 53 apprentices enrolled in that program and has issued worked with MSSC to validate and issue 200 credentials. And it's had some real positive impacts on their workforce. So that would be the most extreme example. And I know that Target's looking to roll that program out nationally in partnership. The initial program was in partnership with Norco College and the Riverside Community College District, but Target's looking to partner with community colleges in all of the areas in which they have facilities that are located, both currently and new facilities that they are building. So Target's really leading the way from that perspective. So maybe I could speak with that particular example.
That's great. And a follow on similar to that that you just talked about, Paul Smith talks about competency-based programs obviously rely on folks having the education and technical backgrounds to understand the program. But he wants to know a little bit more about how you're developing programs for community colleges, which you just talked about, to implement the programs, and how are we going to get to fund these folks who have no resources to join the programs if they don't think they're capable. So I think you touched on that, but anybody want to chime in a little more on funding and attraction of students into these programs?
And one thing I can share with you is that in this kind of part of what I'm lead to in terms of the slide deck that I've put together, which is bits and pieces of information that I picked up along the way. I have varying reports that I can share with anybody who's going after any grant writing in order to need to quote expert sources and resources to justify a program. And from a limited perspective, in the right parts of the country, I can help facilitate some industry introductions with industry partners that may help be able to pull those programs forward. And so in a couple different ways that I could help from that perspective, but I have literally about 3 or 4 reports, and that may be useful to the grant writing team to go after those resources.
Great. And while I'm asking the next couple questions before we end, if you all would, I know you put it on a slide, but if you want to type your email addresses in the chat for people to kind of click on and save, that would be fine too. Here's another question from James Smith, who's from Gateway Technical College or Community College in Phoenix, Arizona. He wants to know what's driving the demand for manufacturing of supply chain automation system, and where does college manufacturing programs fit within the development of those training programs? So the manufacturing of supply chain automation systems, the demand of that is his question around this particular program.
So a lot of the manufacture, some of it occurs domestically, a lot of it occurs in Europe and or Japan, things of that nature. But I think that the one thing that's really particular to point out about the CT-SCA program and the Skill Boss Logistics device, and in general, the suite of programs that MSSC offers, is that these are entry-level technicians. The focus of both the National Center and of course the work on this particular certification is to help people transition career pathways, giving them basic foundational skills in order to become employed for the first time, and then work their way and add additional skills and grow their career pathway and their earning capacity and their quality of life and all those sorts of things. So although this was developed in support and in conjunction with the logistics industry, all of the foundational skills that the CT-SCA teaches have implications in the entry-level technician occupations in today's advanced manufacturing environments. So I think that might go to speak to that, and I think that schools may need to consider that as one of the tools in their toolkit for those programs.
Great. Here's another question just came in. Will there be a job bank for certified technicians? Anybody want to field that from your perspective? A job bank?
I'll take a stab at it real quick.
Sure.
I deal with a lot of folks in that industry right here in the greater Louisville area. We've got manufacturers, both manufacturing systems like this. I've got a lot of friends in the logistics industry. I don't know if there's a data bank or a pool of places, but I can tell you that anybody who wants a job and has a skill set in that arena, they will have multiple interviews. They're going crazy. I was on the phone with our friends at Amazon the other day, and they can't hire enough people. They're looking for 120 technicians immediately in a specific area. And they figured they'd have that done in about a week.
And Craig, this is Neil. I just want to add that we've developed a wonderful partnership with the largest online network of badging called Credly. And what makes Credly so special is that now our certificants, for confidentiality reasons, have to, for privacy reasons and so forth, have to opt into the Credly platform. But we have a platform with Credly and a partnership with Credly where any of our certificants, once they create a profile on Credly, can take any of the credentials they earn with MSSC, which have all been put into badges that HR departments, all they have to do is click on the badge, and it has a drop down of all the competencies, the main competencies they've earned or key activities, skill areas. They can see those immediately, and they have access to all the major job sites in the entire country, our certificants, and any employers that are looking for people with our certificate skills can register with Credly at no cost and find our certificates that are going through our programs and getting credentialed anywhere in the country. So Credly is a fabulous tool for not only our certificates, but also for employers to find our certificates with the skills that they need.
That's great. That's great. And that's where the future continues to grow with these micro credentials and badges. We are strong supporters of getting there so that people can then show them on LinkedIn or their digital portfolio, et cetera. So I'm so glad you're already ahead of the curve on that as well, Neil. One other question for you, Neil. Do you intend to extend MSSC certification to other parts of the world besides Europe? It's a big question.
Well, we actually are not in Europe yet.
Okay.
One of the reasons why we've gone through all the rigor and difficulty in earning the ISO accreditation is it is an international standard, and ISO, whether it's ISO 9000, International Organization of Standardization, is known worldwide, and any ISO accreditation or ISO recognition is world recognized.
Right.
But we would like to expand. We have made efforts in Latin America, and we do have operations in Canada. But like anything else, it requires investment and time to go overseas, and we would need partners to make that happen. But right now, we do have some operation, we have some training and delivery in Mexico, and a much larger, much more so in Canada. But we are looking for opportunities internationally.
Great. Well, obviously, our key focus for this group mostly is in the United States, maintaining or at least regaining its prominence in the world for manufacturing. We've got a couple more minutes, and I've got 2 or 3 more questions, if that's okay with you all. Kathy Grover, Neil, specifically again for you, asked early on, will the CLT certification program be updated in light of rapid changes? She believes it was last updated in 2014. You want to field that?
Yes, absolutely. Like our recent update to CPT 4.0, and I'm glad she asked that question, because one of the requirements of the ISO accreditation that we have to abide by those standards is to maintain our standards at least every 2 years, and then everything else that goes along with that. So the learning materials, the assessments, new questions for the assessments, and so forth. So yes, we just completed CPT 4.0, but we are going to be launching in the early part of the summer CLT 4.0.
Okay.
So, what we all know about the 4.0 industrial era, this will be a transformative era of big data, electronics, intelligent integrated systems. And yes, we are upgrading the CLT certification program for material handling and frontline workers and logistics to the CLT 4.0 level in the early part of this summer. So that includes new e-learning, new textbooks. We're piloting the assessments right now, but the answer is yes, we do plan on launching that in the summer of this year.
Wonderful. Good timing too. It's not that far off. Last
Yeah.
question from the group. Stephen Doms says, COVID materials, vials, stoppers, needles, etc. Future supply problems with vaccination world realities. Foreign versus U.S. production, ? Fill and finish facilities. Anybody want to comment on that? Maybe Steve, on trends in just in time versus, the things you talked about.
Yeah, I don't know that I can comment much on that kind of broad ranging question.
Yeah.
But just in general, the industry is looking at the whole JIT, just in time,
Yeah.
is a thing of the past now. Now it's just in case inventory. People are building up inventories. And of course, the whole trend toward reshoring. Companies are looking at reshoring and moving things back to the US. That momentum, there's momentum there for certain. And in terms of, instead of having supply chains spread all over the world, particularly as it relates to critical items, as the questioner asked about. So
Great. Well, I think we answered most of the questions that were fielded today, and we're out of time within 30 seconds. But first and last but not least, I want to thank you 3 for being not only experts in your fields, but sharing all that you do and connecting industry with education and workforce development in the middle. I mean, that is what we're all about. That's what most of the people that are attending want to know, how the best practices are gone. And you all, Steve, Kent, and Neil, set the bar extremely high with the partnerships with the associations and industries directly. So thank you for all that. We look forward to continuing to share with our network and beyond all the great work you're doing in the future and all the things you've done so far. The webinar today has been recorded. As I mentioned in my chat, It will be posted on the NCATC website by the end or the beginning of next week, by February 28th. So look for that at ncatc.org. And please reach out to Steve, Neil, or Kent if you'd like more information about the programs. And if you'd like to have them share their presentations, those were a couple questions asked as well today. But I know we're out of time. I thank you very much again, and thank you all for attending. It was our biggest webinar to date, and we appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Kent.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Craig.
Neil.
Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Kent, Steve, and Neil. See you soon.
Thank you, Craig. Bye now.
Bye for now.